First question is from Retep Onkalb. What are some of the best moves for building bicep and tricep size and strength?
Oh, yeah. Good old biceps and triceps. Work them arms. So most people understand bicep and tricep exercises as isolation movements. And most people would say, or magazines or internet articles would say something like, barbell curls for biceps, skull crushes for triceps. Those free weight isolation exercises are good for building mass in those two muscles. However, I don't think they build nearly as much muscle as a compound exercise would for those two areas. And this is something that I learned, later on in my career. I understood this with legs. If you were to compare the biceps and triceps to your legs, which would be maybe your quadriceps or like your hamstring or like your triceps, right? And your hamstrings would be like your biceps. What are the best exercises for quads? None of them include isolation exercises. All these compound lifts like barbell squats and front squats and that kind of stuff. Same thing is true for biceps and triceps. Palms up or supinated grip, pull-ups or chin-ups, really focusing on squeezing the biceps. Amazing exercise for building the biceps. It's a pull-up, but it really works the biceps really well. And you're obviously using a lot more weight because it's a compound lift. And then for triceps, like a close grip bench press or dips, those will build more strength and muscle than any other isolation exercise I can think of.
We did a whole episode on these. Yeah. So if this is someone new to listening to the podcast, and we touch on that among other things on the episode. The other thing is like frequency, right? So I agree. The biggest thing or best exercise ever that put size on my triceps were, and I prefer incline. But I mean close grip bench press. And it's simple. If you do skull crushers or you do these isolation exercises, just look at how much weight you can do with those. Mm-hmm. Maybe if you're really, really strong, you're doing 100 pounds or so, give or take on skull crushers. But I mean, you could load a barbell with maybe 225.
Yeah, the same person would do 225.
Right. So you can just load it way more. And then just learning to focus on using the triceps more than your delts or your chest when you do an exercise like that. And then back to my point with frequency, it's just increasing the frequency that you're hitting those muscle groups. I think that's normally the go-to before I get into like major exercise selection. Very, very rare that it's like somebody who's trying to grow their bis and tries and they haven't tried all these different exercises. It's normally that their programming just needs some work. And normally it's somewhere where you increase frequency is what ends up helping the most.
Yeah, it's definitely about, like you mentioned, the load in terms of like an exercise that you're gonna go through this exercise knowing that you can actually load a substantial amount more, but it's about creating the loudest signal with that. So the most force demand. So I have to be able to recruit quite a bit more muscle fibers, throughout my body to produce, one of these compound lifts or one of these other, more involved type exercises. And that, that adds up. Your muscles, even on the individual level, your muscles, get benefit from that and, tend to respond quite more substantially than just, these isolated exercises.
And if you look at like the program, so MAPS Aesthetic is a good example of like when you're trying to target a muscle group and develop it, right? That whole program is designed around picking a muscle group that you want to develop more. And if you unpack the programming, there's, you have your 3 foundational days where you're doing these major compound lifts. And then we have what are called focus days, which are on the opposite days where you're doing the more isolation. So the cable push downs, the basic dumbbell curls, the isolation type of exercises as volume builders on the other 2 days. But you're hitting your arms technically, 3 to 5 times a week. If you do that, they're going to grow, especially if you're doing it well and programming it well with good compound exercises and then isolation exercises to complement that.
Yeah, here's a good example. I'm going to give you a generic kind of good tricep and bicep workout. So, for biceps, you could do your supinated grip pull-ups, really focusing on the bicep squeeze at the top. Start with that. Then the next exercise would be like a barbell curl, and then maybe a hammer curl. Great mass building, muscle building combo right there. For triceps, I would do either weighted dips or close grip bench press to start with. Then you could do a skull crusher, which is the technical term is a lying tricep extension, and then an overhead tricep extension. Great combination. Those 3 exercises. Do them in the order I just said, and for a lot of you listening, it'll elicit some pretty good results.